What up boys, welcome back to another tech video. Just before I start today, if you haven't already, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. It keeps moving on these tech type videos, and hopefully you'll gain some of that valuable knowledge from this channel. Anyway, let's get into Witch. So, as we all know, Witch recently received a huge rework. Let's see the downfalls to her from this first. She now dies to spells. A fireball and a zap will kill her, whereas before, you needed poison log. Her splash range is now almost non-existent, so she's basically a single targeter from here on in. She now spawns skeletons around her instead of in front, meaning she protects herself less on defense from units coming head on. She spawns a skeleton slower, but makes more of them overall. This, in my opinion, is actually a nerf because she's more vulnerable in those seconds before she spawns. These spawns are now every 7 seconds, making it easier for you to manage just the skeletons at a time when defending her. So that's all really how she got worse, but let's talk about how she got better now. Her health and spawns got worse, but her damage saw a big increase. She used to only one-shot skeletons, but now she can one-shot up to princesses and dark goblins. She does hit a bit slower now, but overall her DPS actually went up a considerable amount. So in all, she's now capable of being a damage dealer by herself and not reliant on those skeletons. This, in my opinion, is a positive change, but more on that later. Witch is generally a very simple card to use, and that fact will probably make this the shortest part of the video. She can now function like a tank killer. She does mega minion DPS by herself, this being 160 DPS, and with even just one spawn of 4 skeletons, her DPS supersedes almost any other unit in the game. It's higher than P.E.K.K.A, Goblin Gang, and even Minion Horde, at a colossal 430 DPS. The only units that can outdo a Witch with one set of skeletons are Skarmy, both Infernos, and Spawners. You want to be keeping her in hand for when your opponent throws their win condition or big tanky unit at you. She gets positive trades against almost everything that won't fight back, and she will even 1v1 most units that do fight back pretty well. Splashes and longer range units are the only things Witch can really struggle with, but even then she does well against most of these. She is exceptionally strong against slower melee units, being able to slow and damage them with her skeletons. My biggest tip for using her on defense is to get her down early. She needs a few seconds to spawn those skeletons to protect herself. Talking of protection, that's your main priority with her in many cases. Using some form of mini tank or spell bait enables your Witch to be protected when defending bigger pushes. Let's go more into those synergies now. Something I like to do is pair her with cards such as Night Witch, Flying Machine, or even Elixir Collector. Doing so means you have multiple ways of gaining value when your opponent doesn't have their spell in hand. Mini tanks like Ice Golem mean that even bigger pushes can't access your Witch, allowing her to spawn skeletons and do immense DPS. Protecting her is key, because she's a spawner unit. You want to keep her alive for as long as possible, allowing her to counter push. Using her on defense, having her survive, and then putting a high HP tank in front of her and her skeletons is the #1 way to attack with Witch. She already gained value on defense, so when she can continue to spawn skeletons and do damage on offense, this is all an added bonus and difficult for your opponent to counter. The best tanks for her are Giant and Mega Knight in my opinion. The Giant's high health for medium elixir gives your opponent multiple issues here. They need high DPS to take down this threatening giant beast, and also a rare but appropriate counter to Witch. Mega Knight presents you with a similar issue. Your opponent still needs to rip through a 3.3 thousand hit point tank and deal with the DPS building up behind it. I like her in control decks as a high DPS unit, or in beatdown decks as the ultimate support. Her perfect deck, in my opinion, is Giant Miner. You can use her for both DPS and support roles in this deck, DPSing anything down and then counter-attacking. You can switch your game plan, as I addressed in my Giant Miner video, depending on your opponent's counters, and Witch will still be viable in both game plans by just changing her role in the match. You can counterattack and have the miner tank for her, making your opponent defend different problems from areas again, or you can shove a giant in front of her for the push we spoke about earlier. Overall, she's a nice versatile card for this archetype. Alright, let's get into the main point of this video, countering the Witch. I did a how to counter Witch video a few months ago, but really, it is a lot different now. Spells are most definitely your best friend. Running poison will mean you have zero troubles as long as you keep it in hand for witch hunting. Lightning is also a very good pick, seeing as it will kill off that witch and another unit for just 6 elixir. Outside of spells, I guess splashes are your only option. Cards like Executioner and Valkyrie are actually 2 of the best counters to this card. Range units sort of work against the witch, but most of them really don't because of her really high damage now. A set of ranged attackers that do counter witch are Exenado. It allows you to group and chop up all of your opponent's push, including that dreaded witch. Really, spells and splash attackers are your best bets. You might want to make sure you're running enough of these to be able to keep them in hand for countering witches in the Forsaken meta. Just to end off, I wanted to talk about the overall change in Witch from the last update. Personally, I think Witch was one of the most toxic cards in the game, evidenced by a toxic tier list video that I did recently. The word toxic describes a card's concept as being negative for the game, meaning it's unenjoyable and divisive in how it functions or plays. It is not related to how strong a card is. So when I talk about toxicity, I can example Heal as being one of the most toxic cards in the game right now. However, it is almost useless in terms of power level, so it may confuse a few of you. My opinions on Witch are that she was more toxic before her change, despite being a lower powered card overall. The fact that she is now vulnerable to spells and doesn't solely rely on her skeletons for damage means that she is a card that is annoying for sure, but certainly less toxic than before, despite being a stronger version of her previous self. I think they went a bit overboard on her damage, like she doesn't need to one-shot princesses, for example, but overall the change was a positive. If they had just buffed the old Witch to do more damage, we'd be in a much worse state than we are now due to the toxic concept behind the old Witch. But if they toned this Witch's damage down, we would be in a much better state than we were before with the old Witch. I think even if she needed to two-shot minions, she'd be a more balanced card than right now, and maybe she could even hit a little bit faster with that sort of toned down damage, but who knows? Overall, do I think she's strong? Yes, no question. But do I think she's toxic? Not really. I think she's a lot healthier for the game than before. Do I think this balance change was maybe a little bit inaccurate? Yeah, for sure. But do I think this balance change was a step in the right direction? 100%, and I'm glad it happened and attempted to fix the Witch's toxicity. As a bonus, in my opinion, the change shifted us into a new meta that is frankly fresher than we've had in months. Anyway boys, that is all I have for the new Witch. Hopefully this video helped you understand her more, maybe if you want to use and abuse her, or even if you just needed help encountering her. Thank you for watching till the end of the video, I appreciate you guys the absolute most. But yeah boys, I hope you enjoyed, and peace.